Tonight, Karoline Leavitt walked onto camera thinking she could steamroll another segment with the usual tough talk wins, law and order were in control. But then a reporter did the one thing this White House can't stand. They brought receipts and pinned her down on the contradictions on the so-called drawdown, on the threats, and on the way they're selling this Minnesota crackdown like a victory parade. And in that split second, you can see the script start to wobble, because it's one thing to throw labels like Antifa and shout accountability. It's another thing to explain the facts when someone challenges you live. So don't blink, because the clip you're about to watch is exactly what happens when propaganda meets a follow-up question, and Leavitt realizes she can't just talk her way out of it this time.
Karoline, I had two questions regarding DHS. The first one is, one of the Democrats' main demands for DHS funding was to demask ICE agents. Is this something that the president is even considering?
Again, this is one of the specific points in the letter that went out by Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I won't negotiate the individual points from the podium, but it is obviously something the White House will be discussing with lawmakers on Capitol Hill in the coming days.
Is the administration concerned that the shakeup that we're seeing of DHS activity in Minneapolis could potentially embolden different obstructionist protesters around the country, as they now have a playbook on how to get ICE out of their cities?
No, because what you saw yesterday with the drawdown of 700 agents only occurred because the condition that the President of the United States set for local counties to turn over illegal aliens to ICE has been met. The vast majority of counties, nearly every single county now in Minnesota, has made an agreement to notify ICE when they are releasing an illegal criminal from their jail. This is a huge win for the administration. Again, it's a condition the president set out and has been met thanks to the tireless efforts of Mr. Homan. And as for the left-wing agitators who have been illegally obstructing ICE's immigration efforts, we are not letting that behavior go unnoticed or unpunished. In fact, just today, the Department of Homeland Security arrested this individual. He is a self-proclaimed Antifa member who has been threatening, doxing, harassing ICE. He called for the murder of federal law enforcement officers. He encouraged bloodshed in the streets of Minnesota. He proudly acclaimed affiliation with the domestic terrorist organization Antifa. And the Department of Justice, thanks to the great work of HSI and the FBI, was able to locate and arrest this individual today. So we are committed to enforcing our immigration laws. We want that level of cooperation from state and local officials. And if people are illegally obstructing our federal law enforcement operations, if they are targeting, doxing, harassing, and vilifying ICE agents, they are going to be held accountable, like this individual here, who again is a self-proclaimed member of Antifa. He is a domestic terrorist, and he will be held accountable in the United States.
Let's talk about what really happened in this clip, because the headline version is Karoline Leavitt got stunned. But the deeper story is that the White House press operation just ran straight into the one thing it can't survive: a reporter who doesn't let the spin breathe. This briefing wasn't built to inform you. It was built to message you. The structure is always the same. Drop a dramatic label, announce a win, claim the government is restoring order, and then dare anyone to question it, because the moment you question it, they pivot to you're defending criminals or you're against law enforcement. And Leavitt tried to run that playbook again, leaning hard into Minnesota ICE and the idea that the administration is winning cooperation from local jurisdictions. But here's where the cracks start showing. The drawdown of hundreds of federal agents is framed as a victory lap, like the White House forced compliance, and now gets to pull resources back because the job is done. That's a neat story. Unless someone asks the obvious follow-up questions. What exactly changed? What's the proof? What are the terms? Who signed what? And what does notify ICE actually mean in practice? How consistent is it? How enforceable is it? And how does the administration verify it's happening instead of just claiming it's happening? That's why the reporter's pushback matters. Not because it's gotcha journalism, because it's basic accountability. Press briefings are supposed to clarify reality, not replace it. And the moment someone brings receipts, numbers, timelines, contradictions, the whole performance gets shaky. You can hear it in the way Leavitt shifts from specifics to slogans, from answers to vibes. Because once you're pinned to details, you can't just project strength your way out of it. And then comes the headline grabber. The announcement of an arrest tied to a person the briefing describes as a self-proclaimed Antifa member, alongside claims about online threats and harassment targeting ICE agents. Listen carefully. This is where the briefing becomes less about public information and more about political theater. Because Antifa isn't just a description in this context, it's a signal flare meant to trigger an instant emotional reaction in the audience, fear, rage, tribal loyalty, and a willingness to stop asking questions. Here's the manipulation. When you slap a loaded label on a story, you don't have to prove your broader claims, you just have to keep the audience angry enough that they don't care about proof. It's the same trick every time. You take a complicated situation, immigration enforcement, local cooperation, public protest, federal authority, and you compress it into a cartoon, good guys versus bad guys. Then you frame any skepticism as betrayal, but a serious public doesn't operate like that. A serious public asks, what are the charges? What's the evidence? Who is saying what? What's confirmed? What's alleged? And what's being framed for political gain? This briefing tries to skip those steps by turning one arrest announcement into a broader narrative weapon. See? Opposition equals extremists. Questioning equals enabling. Oversight equals obstruction. And let me be crystal clear. Harassment and threats are wrong. Doxing is wrong. Full stop. People doing law enforcement work shouldn't be targeted personally. None of that is defensible. But condemning harassment doesn't mean you hand the government a free pass to use the incident as a propaganda bat, because that's exactly what happens when they use a single case as a headline shield for everything else they don't want to explain. That's why the reporter's exposure on air, in real time, hits Leavitt like a brick wall. Because once the follow-up question lands, the script doesn't have a safe exit. You can't just say this is a huge win and move on. You can't just announce an arrest and pretend that settles every debate about policy tactics or oversight. And you definitely can't demand that ICE agents remain masked while refusing to discuss the public accountability questions that masking raises, then act shocked when people ask what you're hiding. What you're watching in this clip is not just a spokesperson under pressure. It's a whole governing style under pressure. Governed by headline, not by explanation. Governed by breaking news vibes, governed by enemy labels, governed by implying that the only choices are submission or chaos. And the reason it keeps working is because too many interviews are built to be polite. Too many journalists let officials run out the clock. Too many hosts confuse balance with letting someone dodge. This reporter didn't do that. They pressed. They exposed the gaps. They forced the viewer to notice that what's being presented as clarity is actually a carefully engineered narrative. And that's what stunned Leavitt. The loss of control, not the question itself, the loss of the safe environment where talking points can roam free. Now watch what happens next, because the predictable move after a moment like this is always the same. They'll try to shift the conversation away from the questions and toward the questioner. They'll smear the reporter, accuse the media of bias, and tell you the briefing was misrepresented. And if you're not paying attention, you'll end up debating personalities instead of debating policy. So here's your takeaway. If the administration's story is true, it should survive details. It should survive timelines. It should survive receipts. A real win doesn't require a label to prop it up. A real public safety message doesn't need fear to carry it. And a real commitment to law and order doesn't collapse the second someone asks for specifics. That's why you should watch this clip and watch it like an adult. Don't let the label do your thinking. Don't let the outrage replace the questions. Because the moment you stop demanding details is the moment politicians learn they can govern you with slogans. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we don't just replay the clip, we dissect the spin hit, like, subscribe, and drop a comment, receipts over rhetoric. Because as long as they keep selling power through headlines, we're going to keep forcing the follow-up.